people have been killed in Tanzania as albinos for their parts, if you will. And so really tragic situation. The authorities were wanting to make sure if we were calling all these albinos to one location, that we weren't in fact trying to do that for some devious purposes. And so my brother had to explain a little bit about what was going on. The good news was this fellow down at the Peace Corps headquarters is this fellow that Andy was visiting, the police chief, knew of Chow. And so Chow was the Peace Corps fella. He said, "Oh, Chow, I know him." And so they had a common ground, and they allowed us to keep the Albinism project going. But it could have been short-circuited after 1 week, because the police folks heard about it through the radio. You know, we were doing a great job with our communication. But it was unfortunately a reminder of what the cruelty of people to other people. Yeah, Brent?
Your timing's perfect. I watched 2020 Friday night, and it was about this.
Oh, it was.
And how the people were being tortured and treated and beaten, and it was really sad.
Yep.
And my brother had been in Africa years ago, in southern Rhodesia, Zambia, as a missionary. And so anything about Africa I read and study, but I'm sure you could still catch that on the news.
Okay, 2020.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. It was sad, but very interesting. So I
Yep.
would never dream of that over there.
Yep. Yep. So on 2020, this past Friday, it's probably on the internet if you go to that too. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunately a bigger problem than we recognized when we started this. But it's yet again an example of better to ask forgiveness, because if we had tried to get this program through the government side, it would have been well after we left before it would have been ready to start. So we put it out there, we did it, and it worked out fine.
Did you have a problem getting that on the airplane and shipping it over? They give you a break on freight and then getting stuff in the country?
They gave us no break, but the way we've learned to do these bins causes us a problem, because we put them in those big Rubbermaid tubs, but you know how those Rubbermaid tubs go down. Those tops stay down for a little while, but you've seen them throw those tubs onto the planes and everything else. So what we've done is we use those ties, those plastic ties, and tie them up. Well, the problem is when they snip them, you have to have everything set up, and it takes a while to do that. In customs, they actually required us to take all those tabs off, show them what was inside, and then we could reapply the tabs. But they cut them off, so we've learned, you know, you put 2 extra sets of new ties underneath the lid of the tubs. But back to your question, Jim, they didn't give us any major breaks, but they didn't cause us any huge problems either. So when they opened them up, they said, "Oh, yep, it is sunscreen." They looked for a minute, but pretty much waved us along. And it was only the U.S. authorities that gave us any trouble. The folks in the other countries were pretty much very lax on security, for the most part. Okay, well Laura?
Regarding the issue of sunscreen, my understanding is that the dark pigment in African Americans is not a protection against skin cancer, and that all people everywhere, no matter what color their skin is, should use sunscreen.
You know, it's interesting. I would tell you that there in the country, even though that may be true, you don't see, for the most part, except for those suffering albinism, you don't see a lot of problem with skin issues. That doesn't mean they're not there, but it's interesting you mentioned that. But part of it in Africa is they have no way of financing that. You know, so it would be a mere problem of if they manufactured it there, maybe that would be something that they could afford. But this is a culture, as you'll hear in sort of the second half, financially it would be a real burden for them to be able to apply the sunscreen. On the other hand, maybe we should be educating them that they all should be wearing full-length tops and hats and sunglasses, which no one, almost to a person, sunglasses, no one I saw had sunglasses on. But there were a few people wearing caps. But they really don't heed that advice.
Do they have access to local medical help? In other words, are there local clinics or doctors handy for people who really develop these terrible skin cancers?
There are. Yeah, there's a local hospital there, for instance. So the medical help is more readily available, but if you went in there and needed an appendectomy, we're not talking that kind of hospital. It's very much a triage. Anything major, they're going to ship you down to the capital city.
Who are these people trained who staff these local?
I don't know enough about that in terms of who the physicians are. I think at least a fair number of them are locally trained versus being brought in.